So we're here with Mark Heron, who's conducting the RNCM new ensemble in a piece that was written in '98, wasn't it?
That's right. Horseplay by Errollyn, Wallen.
Yeah. So, do you want to tell us first a bit about the piece first?
Sure. It's in 4 movements, and it was written. It was a ballet originally, so it was written for the Royal Opera House, the Royal Ballet. And they gave the premiere in '98, and it's also survives as a concert work in its own right. Four movements of really quite eclectic music, I think.
I think so. Just to sort of give an overview of kind of what happens, it's the first day of rehearsals today, isn't it?
Yeah. So the concert is on Thursday lunchtime. It's now Tuesday morning. So basically, it's a kind of 3-day project. The concert also contains one other piece by Errollyn and a piece by a student composer. So it's a sort of lunchtime concert as part of a day focusing on our music.
So the bar 52, the agitated, maybe not very clear in the parts, but the agitato, if you like, comes exactly on the half bar. Yeah? So I'm in quavers for that bar, but the first 2 beats are slower, and then the second half of the bar is quicker. Yeah? All in quavers, but 2 different tempos. Yeah? 1, 2, da, ba, ba, ba. Yeah? That sort of idea. So let's start, please, halfway through that bar. Yeah? So this is exactly halfway through the 2/4 bar, which is 52. Yeah? I'll give you that tempo. 1, 2. That's idea. I think as much pitch as possible. Can we go on? 20. 3, 4. This whole section from 37 needs to be a little dirtier, I think. Yeah, sounds a little twee at the moment. Yeah, it's a bit too classical. Yeah, and what does that mean? It probably means short notes are not that short. Yeah, not ba. Yeah, ga. Yeah, give the short notes a bit of weight. Yeah, and try and even in quite a quick tempo, try and feel the kind of offbeats. Ga, ga, ga. Yeah, nice and steady. I remember seeing an interview with Wynton Marsalis, one of the few people who genuinely straddles the jazz and classical worlds with great success in both. And somebody was asking him, I suppose the question you would always ask him, what's the difference between a jazzer and a straight classical player? And he said, it was really interesting, he said he thought classical musicians tend to think about the beat as being a specific moment in time at the beginning of every beat, whereas jazz musicians can think of being in the back of the beat, the front of the beat, the middle of the beat. You know, the beat is a fluid thing, yeah? Which probably explains why it's so hard for us to sound cool when we play this kind of thing, because we just think 1 and 2 and 3 and just think in the back of the beat. Yeah, but that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah? The back end of the beat. Yeah? Let's do it. 37. 37. 1, 2. Crotchets.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. what you were doing would make it too easy. 75, please, which is the bar after the 3/4. 75. 3.
So the students would have had the music in advance, at least I hope so. I did send, because some of it's rhythmically quite complex, so what I often do in that situation is send round a little bit of information about what I'm beating, what the pattern of the 7/8 bar are, and so on, and the sort of slightly more complex time signatures, just so that they're a little bit sort of pre-warned. But we had a few situations where the parts that they had didn't match my score.
31. The 10/8 is...
But Mark, we have a 9/8.
You have a 9/8
Yes.
at 31.
At 31, yeah.
Okay. So you have a 9... Well, and then the next bar, 32?
No. It's the same.
Okay. And then? Oh, that's what I've got. Okay, so you've got a 10/8, you've got two 9/8s where I've got a 10 and an 8.
Yes.
Okay, so they've evened that out to make the same. Okay, 13/8. Then the next bar, 34.
9/8.
All right, I've got a 10/8 there. And then 35?
And then we have...
Oh, okay, so it's the other way around. So from 31, 9/8, 9/8, 13/8, 9/8, 10/8, 3/4?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, so the composer's in tomorrow, isn't it, for the rehearsals? So, I mean, part of I think as conductors have to do is, when you're learning a piece from scratch, even though this is sort of it's been out a while now, hasn't it? But I wonder what you kind of do. It'd be interesting to know what your kind of process is from working with the score, then to teaching it to the players, but also perhaps at the back of your mind knowing that the composer will be visiting us as well. So, how do you kind of prepare for all of that?
Sure. I mean, that can vary quite a lot because it depends a little bit. It depends if the piece is brand new, for example. So very often with this kind of ensemble in this kind of context, the piece will actually be brand new, and therefore there have been no previous performances and there are no recordings. So in that sort of situation, you kind of have to take decisions, but you also have to be sort of flexible about the fact that the composer may come in and want to make changes, as is their right with something they're hearing for the first time. And that's one of the reasons why we always try to make sure that the composer gets the chance to hear the day before the concert. In many situations with world premieres, the composer might only be there for the dress rehearsal, by which point it's really too late to change.
Yeah.
And many composers talk about that a lot, actually. They know that when they turn up to the last rehearsal, they just sort of smile and say everything is fine, thank you very much, and then they go away and revise the piece after the first performance. Having the composer in the room before that gives enough time to make some adjustments, so that's helpful. In this case, the piece has been recorded, actually, so it has been possible to listen to it, and I emailed Errollyn a couple of weeks ago just with a couple of questions about Tempe, and she more or less directed me towards that recording which she supervised. And she said, yeah, I mean, I get the sense from the way that she writes, she's quite flexible. All the tempo markings are approximate and flexible, and she's not the kind of composer who writes down, it must be this specific measure of mark.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because you've done a lot of contemporary music and worked a lot with composers. Do you find that composers are quite happy to have your interpretation, or are they a little bit more demanding in what they want, or can it be anywhere in between?
Can go absolutely either way. Absolutely either way. Some composers are incredibly specific about what they wrote down. They know precisely what they wrote down. They can hear with great clarity if it's anything different from what they said, and they would say, well, it's very clear in the score, I think you'll find. We had a very good example of that last year, this time last year, in fact, with George Benjamin, who is incredibly specific and has an incredible pair of ears on him, and he just hears everything that's not as he wrote it. Other composers are very, very, very happy to adapt, to be flexible. Also pieces, this is, as you say, not a new piece at all. So very often composers will come with if it's a piece that's 20, even 30 years old. I remember Harrison Birtwistle a few years back, and we did quite a major festival of his music, and some of those, he's now in his 80s. Some of the pieces we played, he wrote in his 20s.
Okay, so that's a lot.
And he was, we were asking him for his opinion on something, and he said, well, I don't know, it's 50 odd years since I heard this piece. He's written a lot of notes since then. So there's also that aspect of it, and of course, performers change their way of playing, and in that way, so do composers. They evolve their way of writing. They'll often say, "Oh, I wouldn't quite write like that now. I would probably do that slightly differently." Sometimes you are in a kind of recreative process. Sometimes you're just absolutely using the score as a very, very, very precise roadmap and doing precisely what it says there.
So tomorrow it could go either way.
It absolutely. I would place my bets in a certain way, but I could be surprised. Let's see.
Think about how the players and what they're faced with, because I think it's fair to say that 100% of the players will be sight reading, or sight reading today, even though it's not a new piece of music. But it's very different from rehearsing, say, a piece of Beethoven, where you can be confident that everyone in an orchestra, especially at this level or a professional level, will know it. So what kind of process do you go to help the players get around that and learn the music?
Well, one would hope, when you say sight reading, it depends what you mean by sight reading. Yeah. Sight reading in terms of it's the first time they've played it together as an ensemble, of course. Yeah. One would hope that with quite complex music like this, that a little bit of individual preparation has been done, and that's one of the things that, of course, varies very much from a standard core orchestral situation, where generally speaking, the solo players, i.e. the wind and brass players, maybe will kind of remind themselves of it a little bit. The bulk of the string section just turn up to the first rehearsal and remember it as they go. With this kind of repertoire, with this ensemble where everybody is a soloist, one player on each part, a little bit of advanced preparation is kind of essential. But even so, when it comes to fitting it together, even in this case where they could listen to the recording, most of them probably did, some of them perhaps not. Yeah. It's still then there's a familiarization process. So just repeating things when the music is not too complex is very helpful. Once they've done it for the second or third time, it starts to make sense. On the other hand, when the music is very complex, some explanation is sometimes required right from the very beginning, and then you just literally have to explain how many beats there are on each bar, and what order they come in, and then very, very quickly just rehearse very slowly in order for the complex rhythmic music to fit together, and then gradually wind it up as you go. Yeah,
because I was. It was interesting seeing the rehearsal this morning. The way it was sort of broken down into parts, just to make it easier for people to kind of get to grips with it and find the geography.
I think you would definitely say that in this kind of music, there's probably more stopping and starting and more explaining than in a Beethoven symphony, for example. As you say, when you do core repertoire, everybody kind of knows how it goes. When you go to an established orchestra, they will also have their own way of doing Eroica Symphony or Tchaikovsky 5 or whatever it is. With this kind of thing, you don't have that sort of inbuilt way of doing a certain thing. So you do have to explain, but you also have to remember that they need to play the music enough to familiarise themselves with it in order that they can then play it through. I think there's a great danger with this kind of thing that you rehearse in great detail with a lot of stopping and starting, and then the first time you go from beginning to end might be the concert. Sometimes that's unavoidable, but the overall shape of it is important, especially with this piece, which is right from the very beginning, we were talking a little bit about sound and character. It's by no means a sort of stereotypical piece of contemporary music which is all just crash bang Wallen and rhythms. There is emotional content and character to this music. Absolutely.
I was going to ask as well. So, for example, when scheduling putting together a rehearsal schedule for, say, something in the core repertoire, because it's been done a number of times, you can work out how long you need to approximate you can spend on things like this. And I wonder whether whether you had sort of a bit of a schedule and you kind of were able to work out that, and whether actually that changed and you thought, actually, this has gone better than I thought it was, or this has not gone quite as much, and sort of adjusting it on the fly, is that?
Yeah, well, I mean, we adjusted on the fly a little bit because the pianist came to me at the start of the rehearsal this morning and said, "How many movements are there in this piece?" And I said, 4. And she said, "Yeah, I thought so. I only have 3.
Oh, right, yes.
So my colleagues in the orchestra management office had to call the publisher and get the part emailed over and so on. So that meant that we simply couldn't do the last movement until after we got the music. Also meant that she was very well, genuinely sight reading the 4th movement when we did it. So yeah, there is a bit of adjustment in terms of how much time you spend in each of the movements. I mean, I think it was fairly clear to me that the 3rd movement, which is kind of slow and fairly straightforward, wouldn't take much time, and we didn't really spend much time on that today at all. The 2nd movement is much more complex, so that's always going to get a bit more time. There's also the question of how the music is, how the pieces are scheduled across the whole program. So to an extent, you just have to guess that a little bit.
Yeah.
You start off by working out, in pro rata terms, how many minutes each piece will get in the time you have available, and then you think, well, okay, this piece is really hard and this piece is not so hard, so you adjust that according to that. But we will probably adjust a little bit over the course of the next few days, because one of the other piece by Errollyn, which is a much newer piece, which has never been recorded, nobody had heard it before, is probably just a little trickier than it kind of appeared on the page. So we'll probably need to steal a little bit of time from a couple of the other pieces in order to devote a bit more to that. But yeah, you just have to be flexible.
So for people who have perhaps much less experience about putting this kind of music together, or maybe it's their first time, when they're looking at the score for the first time and they're trying to work out those rehearsal schedules, what are the key things to look out for and to look for, oh yes, that might need a bit more time or a bit less?
Well, anything that's fast and has a lot of kind of short interchanging rhythms is always going to be complicated. Yeah. The music of Steve Reich and John Adams, sounds in a way quite simple when you listen to very polished performances of it, but it can often be really quite complex to fit together. The sort of stuff that sounds amazing on the playback on the computer when you write it, that's very, very difficult to put together. So that kind of rhythmic complexity is something. You also look for, of course, complex rhythms, a lot of changing meters. What's quite challenging in this piece is there are a lot of transitions. So you're going from one section of music into another. If the whole piece or the whole movement is in one fundamental style and one tempo, that will come together much more quickly than a piece which has 2 or 3 different sections. Even if some of those sections are not that tricky from a technical point of view. So the challenge of the transition is certainly a factor. And the individual technical difficulty of everybody's parts. The tuned percussion parts are a bit of a roast in quite large in the 2nd and 4th movements of that piece.
But they have quite a lot to do, sort of running around and things to sort of negotiate.
They do. There's quite a lot of kind of logistical project management going on there. Between the 2 of them, they have enough instruments for 5 or 6. So that in itself is something that you factor into the rehearsal schedule. Absolutely.
Okay, great pleasure to welcome Errollyn.
Lovely
For those
to
who
be here.
haven't already welcomed her. Okay, well, let's have a go and see how we're doing. Beautiful. Okay, good. So let's have another look at that last section.
It's really, really good. So could that be really, really quiet there?
Yeah.
And it's high. Oh, it's high.
So the 12/8 there at the end, 90. We talked about this yesterday, didn't we? Seb and Sarah. Soft as possible. Soft as possible the last 3-4 bars.
What happens?
You can do better than that.
What happens if you play it low? Is it, well, we've got the little Celesta coming in. Oh. Should we just hear that? Is it possible to hear?
Mm-hmm, sure. Here's bar 90. So the last 4 bars. 3.
It's lost something though, isn't it?
Yeah. I think it's better where it
Yes,
is.
but it is.
Do they need to play the sforzando piano, or can they just sort of start
You
it
can
quietly?
just start quietly.
Just start it quieter. Yeah. Just scratch the sforzato.
Do you know what I'm like? You understand the piece, you've got the spirit of it, and it's good.
Can we start? That's the idea. So beginning, is she free enough at the beginning? Could it be more?
Yeah, it could be free and slightly sort of I'm saying rich, but not too heavy. Like, yeah, sort of very lyrical. Let's see. See, I hear things that go out and I forget what I don't say.
You and me both.
But this is so nice because I don't know how this piece goes. It's just coming back to me now. And I can say Sibelius didn't do it. I did it all myself. But you know, there's a lot of effects here that really shouldn't work, but they sort of do. And some of the orchestration you sort of wouldn't. It's really complicated, you know, where you're often playing together jagged. But actually, it sounds amazing, doesn't it? And it's quite unorthodox.
Nice.
It's quite unorthodox. But really, I really like this. Writing this piece because it was a friend. He's a friend and he was a choreographer, and so he literally was telling me what he would say. I want this here, I want that there. It's really nice.
So it completely came from the dance.
Yeah, and the movement before was basically there's a song line he liked, and he really wanted that rhythm.
Sure.
So,
So it's his fault. Okay.
I'll let you carry on.
Let's go on. Yeah. Just that last 10-8 bar. Junk, gunk, king, gunk, 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 king, gunk, gunk, gunk.
You know that section here that you're playing. You know how it's hard and it's high, but if you could really sort of push out the notes, I don't mind if it sounds, you know,
Rough.
wrong. That's the word, rough. I'd rather that than sort of hold back.
Yep. Just that bar 115. 155. 155. Down. 3. And let's play it short at this speed. Yeah? If we play it short at this speed, we can play it short at full speed. 3 and. Are you happy with the sticks? Is it happy with the sound at the moment?
What do you think?
I don't know. I was wondering whether you wanted it harder or whether.
Let's try harder sticks. Yeah, let's try.
Is that the semi-hard ones that were? Yeah.
Just say something.
Should we
I
try
just
really
really
hard
like how
instead
you're
of
playing it,
semi-hard?
everybody. It's really. Have you played the little thing yet? It sounds lovely. It sounds lovely, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's great. It's fine. It's fine. It's good. We can try it.
I love a
tonight.
shaker. It's better.
You like that? Yeah, I think so. I think in here is better, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Okay, here we go. Press them. Hey.
It was for, and I was working with a choreographer who, you know, who was at that time was dancing the Royal Ballet, but I'm very good friends, and he really loved my music.
Yeah.
But he really got the music from me that he wanted. That was such a fantastic collaboration. But the thing is, it was from 4 male dancers, and the point is that for jumps and certain things, that the music really, we actually, when I wrote it, we rehearsed it for ages with the rehearsal pianist, just getting the exact metronome marking right, because if it was too slow, they just couldn't jump.
You couldn't do it, yeah, so that had to all be...
That's part of it.
I mean, an interesting question, perhaps, for both of you is that if you take music that was perhaps originally designed for the stage or for people to dance to, and then you do it in a concert setting, does anything kind of change in that process? Or?
Well, I suppose you have more freedom, don't you, straight away,
Yes.
to perhaps take different decisions or sometimes less compromises in
Yes.
tempo. I don't know. I don't know how you feel. We're sort of, because I don't think we're doing the metronome marks particularly
Yes, but
accurately. But
you're doing, for example, you're playing the faster movements faster than I've ever heard them.
okay,
But which is the tempo I wanted it to be. So I'm very excited about that. And
maybe the players would disagree, but perhaps they prefer it slower. But
no, I like it because it's got. Yes, actually, I was thinking the very same thing in answer to your question. How when you take things away from the theatrical context, but I think they work brilliantly in concert. Recently I went to see a concert version of Peter Grimes, and that was so fabulous. Partly because you weren't distracted by, you could just hear the drama that's in the music. You could hear everything. In the music, the lighting, the costumes.
I think what would be really interesting to know as well, just from a composer's point of view and the conducting point of view. Obviously, Mark, you know how the process was yesterday and now here today, and from your point of view, hearing it for the first time as it is today, was there anything you sort of felt, oh, that's unexpected, or I think where again yesterday I sort of asked a little bit about kind of making perhaps changes on the fly, and what's interesting to know from a conducting point of view is what you can do actually to make those changes and adapt to the situations and kind of how you dealt with that.
I don't know. I didn't get the sense that you were. That there was anything major that you wanted to change about how we were doing it.
But all those little things, for example, Mark suggested harder sticks from room, but immediately it seems like a small decision, but actually it means that it means you see it. But I really believe that all those little touches, those little decisions, whether you put things up and down the octave, whether you play something a bit, they really matter in the whole spectrum of the piece.
And those can change according to the acoustic, according to the players, according to the particular situation. Hearing the piece for the first time in, I don't know, when was the last time you heard that?
When we recorded it, which was something like 2001 or something.
Okay, so quite a while, yeah.
That's mad, isn't it? But the thing about the piece, it really is hard. Maybe I shouldn't say it here, but it was first played, at the Royal Ballet, and they couldn't get to grips with it for whatever reason, because it's actually a hard piece to put together. So I'm very impressed with Mark, knowing how to rehearse a piece like that, where it's very particular. And on the page it looks not too hard, but actually it's, for ensemble, the writing of it is not forgiving, so people have to have a rest and they have to come exactly, and that's hard to get together.
Very, very different from playing Swan Lake or something, isn't
Yes.
it? If that's your day job, because of course the Royal Ballet, Orchestra, the Royal Opera, they're phenomenal players.
Yes, phenomenal.
But they're not. It's not like the London Sinfonietta who are playing that kind of music all the time, or BCMG or something. So I suppose that's that's a difference, isn't it? So it must have been interesting.
Yes. It was very interesting because I remember Opera House Royal Ballet was saying, oh yes, we can do everything on 2 rehearsals. So we just had 2 rehearsals, which is and they were hoping to do some Kurtag as well. And then they quickly realised they better just go do some
Right, okay.
So they totally underestimated what's involved when you're playing new music. It was very funny.
Well, of course, because if you are bringing out your Nutcracker every 2 years or whatever, then of course everybody the starting point is that everybody in Orchestra knows how it goes. And with contemporary music, that's of course a big difference. Exactly. Absolutely. And is that why because there are some things that have been changed in the parts? Was that part of the process to try and simplify it? Or?
I need to actually go and look at those parts.
Because it's exactly the same music, it's just barred in slightly
Yes.
different ways. I can absolutely see why they've done it.
It could have been a conductor doing
They
that.
just did that kind of in private to just make it a little easier.
What was interesting, when we came to record it, as I was saying to Mark, the conductor felt that we couldn't record with all those, I can't remember which movement, where there's lots of, it's very atmospheric and there are lots of rests.
Yeah.
But actually I think in a console, silences are even more exciting.
It can be quite powerful, can't it?
And there of course can then be a sort of flexibility and spontaneity about it that you simply can't do with dancers, of course.
No.
Because they'll just dance they'll quite rightly dance what they've learned, of course.
Yes.
So I've got a question to ask, and I asked the similar question to Mark yesterday, but I'll ask it to you in reverse.
Yes.
And that was, I asked Mark yesterday what he thought the relationship between the conductor and the composer was in a setting like this, when you have the luxury of performing a piece with the composer in the room. So I'm going to ask you what you think the relationship between the composer and the conductor is. You know, how do you feel that relationship should work?
It's a crucial relationship.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've not met Mark before. Oftentimes I've been in a situation where I know that really people don't want the composer there, because a composer can actually get in the way, because somebody's thinking about different things. You might be trying to fix a problem that you've caused yourself, or you can hold things up. So for instance, on the last movement, which is hard, really people just needed to keep playing it, didn't they? So there's no point me commenting too much. I think it's very, very important. I'm not a conductor, and I think I'd be a terrible conductor, but it's often the conductor can suggest things to a composer which make, just from the total different practical experience of conducting and working with musicians. So I like that relationship very much.
I think to pick up on something you said about having the composer there or not, and at what point you do it. I think there can be situations, and it depends on the composer, of course, because many composers are, as you were, incredibly easy to work with and very supportive, and that's great. It must be very daunting though sometimes if you're hearing your music in the very early stages of it being put together, and you have something in your head, you know exactly what you want it to sound like, and it's not quite there yet. You can see why composers would find that frustrating. So I think sometimes perhaps them not being there at the very beginning.
They shouldn't be there.
On the other hand, if you're only there in the dress rehearsal 2 hours before the concert, it's too late to do anything. So it's all about timing, isn't it? About time for it to be sort of in shape, so that you're hearing something that's pretty close, hopefully, to what you've written, but also still time to change some things.
And what I totally understand is that everybody practices their part, and I also understand the difference from rehearsal to then performance. All sorts of things happen there, but I find that exciting, and that's the point where I really like to judge my music, when it's actually in the white light, because then you sort of sit with the audience and sense how the piece is coming on.
So do you sort of I guess welcome the input from the players and the conductor for and kind of want that sort of creativity even in the kind of bounds of what you've kind of given them on the page?
Yes, like today the rehearsal. Really, for the first time, I understood the difficulties, because I wasn't so much at the rehearsals at the Royal Ballet, and then I was there for a little bit when we came to record. But what's interesting is how the more you hear a piece played by different people, you start to understand, where things are maybe unnecessarily difficult, or where you could have made things created the same effect but played different. So I quite welcome hearing where those difficulties are, because I think I'll clock it and think, okay, next time I'll make sure I do this then. So this piece is quite unorthodox orchestration, but I do love this work because it's very exposed, but there's an energy and tension with the playing. Everybody's really on their toes, and that actually makes it exciting to listen to as well.
Well, that sort of, I think, follows on a little bit to what my next question would be. Am I correct in thinking this piece was written, is it 1998, was it?
Yes,
yeah.
yes, it would have been.
So, has your, since when you kind of first wrote it and performed it, have you changed much to think, no, actually I'll kind of revisit, or do you prefer sort of, no, I've kind of done that now?
Yes, I'd leave that. But if I was my composition tutor, I would think, different ways. Maybe borrowing things, make things a bit clearer.
Yeah.
This is a handwritten score, probably one of the last handwritten scores I wrote. But actually, I do love seeing, because I don't know. It's not.
You don't. Because when I first picked it up, from our library, a couple of months ago or whatever, and kind of opened it, and it's a handwritten manuscript score, and you in a way your sort of heart sort of slightly falls.
Yes.
But I don't even realise I'm reading a manuscript score now.
No.
You learn it like you do any other score, because
Yeah.
you're not actually reading every note anyway, of course, when
Yeah.
you conduct it. So it so quickly becomes not an issue. I think maybe the young student players would feel differently because their parts were typeset.
Exactly.
But they're from a generation where they've never played from manuscript scores. But I'm old
Yes.
enough to have had to do that.
Yeah.
So
the parts do. This is a work that, to be honest, it does need properly put on Jan Sibelius, and the parts made a bit, just a bit more user friendly. But I like looking at it thinking, oh yes, I thought of those sounds. I didn't have the luxury of playing back from Sibelius, and I just went. And what also reminds me of that just lovely collaboration with Tom Sapsford. We worked so it was such a privilege to work with him. And then we would go for rehearsals, and Anthony Dowell was there. And it was just, I just remember that working with the dancers was just a lot of fun.
can I ask where you mentioned the instrumentation being slightly unorthodox? What was this? How did that come about? Was that your idea? Was that their idea? Were you given a blank palette to
I was
kind of
given a
choose
blank
from?
palette, and actually it's a conductor friend that said, oh, maybe do this. Well, figuring out what instruments I would use. But once I decided, so little things like the marimba part is really for marimba specialist, which because we've got some, sticking is tricky, but I know that's because it derives from, say, a piano riff that I would like to play. But there are things that some things are just too high, some things are just there's a lot of awkward places, aren't there?
Yeah, but for a reason,
Yes.
It's in no way just gratuitous difficulty.
No.
Everything is really well heard and really there for a reason. And the very prominent saxophone part is that an instrument you were sort of particularly kind of interested in, including in this? I don't know when the last time a saxophone would have been involved with the Royal Ballet, but
Exactly. I can't remember. But I had written a piece. One of my first pieces I wrote had soprano sax and clarinets in it, and so I must have. But it just works absolutely well, and that combination with marimba and the sax is
it's really effective. Yeah. And no double reeds at all, so no oboe bristle. Soprano saxophone, clarinet, bass clarinet. So the wind section is quite a single reed.
Yes, it is.
So you can kind of blend those sounds, especially with the horn as well.
Yeah. And then the piano part then of course becomes much more connected to the vibraphone and the marimba.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
So anyway, it's lovely to hear work that you wouldn't write now, but that of all the works I've heard today, that's the Horseplay is the one I think, oh, I'm so pleased it's caught the spirit of something.
Yeah. So, do you see? I mean, this is the question, really about the sort of the actual piece itself.
Yes.
About where that title came from and where is and kind of is there kind of an underpinning story that goes through it, or is it just is it completely abstract?
Well, Tom and I knew we were going to be working together, but he was actually struggling for a theme. He knew he was going to be working with 4 male dancers, and they were really the top dancers.
Yeah.
I can't remember all their names, but they really were the top. And it's like 4 is quite little, so in other words, it's quite a long dance for them. Because they're pretty much on stage most of the time, all 4 on stage most of the time. And he was struggling to come up with a title, and then, I think it might have been a boyfriend said, oh, we were just talking, we were then talking about horses, and he came with the idea of horses archetype. I thought that sounds quite grand. So I stole that idea for myself, and I said, Tom, what about horses archetype? He said yes, because with all the leaps and so basically that set him on his way, and that he wanted to show different types of strength and masculinity. And why I like it's got all the things I love. You can hear very clearly Ravel, Stravinsky, there's even a bit of river dancing.
Yeah.
It's just sort of very cheesy in places, but I don't care.
I would say it's characterful. Is it?
Yeah.
We're home and dry. Can we do all of that again? But can we just keep everything pits? Don't change to arco, and obviously don't bother playing the 7s and 6s. Just play everything pits because it makes us more rhythmic. Yeah? 1, 3, 2, 3. on. Yeah? Now, don't let the fact that you've now got a piece of wood with a horse hair on it make you play horseplay unrhythmically. Okay, do as close as you can to the dryness and the energy of pizzicato, yeah? And then it'll work. Again, 1, 3, 2, as notated. Yeah, that's it. Just let's be careful that 87, 88, 89, as we all start to play, and we all start to play something a bit more busy, that it doesn't get much louder. Yeah? Keep it super quiet. Can we do once from 87, Celeste and violins? 87 is... That's it, yeah. So I would say set a very flautando and actually sends a vibrato as well. Yeah. Just to match the sound. Yeah. Everybody from there, 87 is and. So if you guys get to that sort of part of the bow and we hit that last chord, then it'll be, you can watch them, then you can judge how far you've got left. Yeah. Just be a little bit more aware between the melody line and the violin line. Yeah. Start, second, third quavers, etc. Yeah. Just connect that in your minds a little bit more clearly. 59 directly is... Good, yeah. Just be really sure that we place the start of the second beat in the melody line, yeah? Cha 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 ra ra. Yeah? Don't fall into that too soon. Once more. Is 1, 2. Let's go into that. So we'll start at 54, please. 2/4 bar, 54. 3, 4. Yeah, very good, very good, very good, very good. I feel that I just have to kind of pull you back in that first bar of 37, and it's fine. Just pull yourself back rather than be pulled back. Maybe it's the staccato on the second quaver of the bar. Just make sure that the second beat doesn't fall early. Yeah, place that second beat, and then we're good. Good. So let's just do this transition another once, or maybe twice. last thing we just need to tidy up. Yeah? So let's just do 107 directly. 107 directly is 1, 2, 107 directly. 1, 2, and. Good. So really try and hear Nigel. Maybe if you play stronger, that'll help as well. Yeah? Ooka, 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 ba, da, ba. Dead easy. Now going into that, 101 again. 1, 2, and. 1, 3, 2 is. 1,